will give hopefully clues how you can become part of healing our planet.
I'm one of your co-hosts, Renata, and William Rainin as well is here. We're here every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. on BT Radio Universal. Welcome to the new normal. New normal, exploring infinite possibility. I forgot the other half. I'm Renata.
What is normal? I have no clue.
Seriously, I'm Renata, and the topic today is death and rebirth.
Rebirth, and we're all in that cycle.
We are absolutely all in that cycle. And it's just so interesting that this week, a couple days ago, I didn't get a chance to share with you, William, but George and I woke up to a thud. And then George kind of like ran to the window, and then he's like, oh, bird. So a bird hit our screen. And I'm like, oh, poor little bird. It was a robin. So I stayed with it for a little bit. We ended up burying it, and putting it, in the greenery, giving it back to Mother Earth. But that idea of birth, death and rebirth is what kind of like made me think about.
And it's not just birth and death of human beings.
No.
And what societies have done to the natural process is definitely against human evolution.
I know, on the way, and we were talking about the Egyptians mummify, for the afterlife, and you said, and they even put servants in there.
Oh yes, yes.
Maybe some gold, some precious.
Not maybe, a lot.
And it's what's that whole thing about? You're just going to come back and repeat the same thing again?
Well, part of the Egyptian thing was they believed that until they incarnated again, they would need all of those things to have a content life in the spirit world.
I think that, I kind of get that's in a lot of cultures.
Oh, it is, yeah. Oh,
I mean, even in our culture with you mentioned the embalming. So natural decay is natural decay, right?
And natural decay is part of the evolutionary process. And so if you look at the history of human beings, cremation and natural burial in earth was traditional. The Christians and the Jews took that away.
I remember getting a hold of a book called Green Burial. The woman, I think, lived in either Oregon or she might have even lived here, but she talked about how sacred it was and how okay it was to bury your loved ones, whether it's your dog or your cat or your mom or dad or whatever, in your backyard. And she gave specific instructions on how to do that.
Yes, yes.
And do a ceremony. And I'm like, oh, I thought you had to, your only choices were cremation, right? Or embalm at a place that does the embalming. Not true.
Not true at all.
And it's nice for people to kind of know that. Just the whole topic's not about burying people, but that idea that you have options, because nature has options.
Well, if you think of the Vikings, and we think of them as primitive, violent, their cremation was in boats.
Bahama.
And then, yeah, but the thing was, the ashes were carried by the ocean and by the wind all over the world to rejuvenate where it's needed.
And that seems to be a really cool thing. We watched a video on fungi, magic fungi, and it was talking about the huge network that mushrooms or fungus creates underground, that communication network. And we learned that there were like, 1.5 million species of fungi. 1.5 million species, largest category of any species on the planet.
Yes, yes.
And out of that 1.5 million species, there's like 20 million mushrooms, species.
Yes.
And so they're prolific, and it talked about that, almost compared that mushroom underground network to that of our internet, which is so, expansive now, and everything, the internet of everything now these days. But Mother Nature has everything built, and that decay was amazing because that was an indication of new life and growth.
Exactly, recycled. So throughout history, you find that even the most ancient of people, one of their most important symbols was a circle. Always the circle evolving, and that is why they didn't believe in embalming, they didn't believe in preserving. They allowed death, endings, to be creative. And that's how we've been advanced, is we've taken natural things and used those to evolve and develop new things. And then science came along so powerfully and wanted everything to fit a category, fit a specific rule, at which point the creativity has been stopped dramatically.
I like how you tie that into the creative cycle.
Yes.
For sure. And then that
Absolutely.
that idea of allow the natural unfoldment, and then allow the newness to come up. That's a big one right now that we're facing with this. Maybe it's more of a metaphysical death or symbolic death,
I understand.
How important is that to really allow the let go? Allow the things to fall away that need to fall away. And allow the things that are, being rebirthed to be rebirthed.
One of the things that our academic societies have designed that I think is very inappropriate is holding on to memories of the people that are no longer living.
Yeah, I know. When I first met you, you talked a lot about that. It's okay to celebrate and remember certain things and mark holidays. There's nothing wrong with that. But to have a continual obsession with that is, at some point, like for instance, when a loved one passes, it's the grieving process is the grieving process. It just takes what it takes. You honor that. But to keep going back there is like it stops you from growing.
And you see, I almost sort of do disagree. The grieving process is encouraged. Let it come, let it go, let it evolve on your own, at which point the ego takes over and determines, I'm still in pain, and so it's self-serving. And at that point, I go along with the Asian belief of give yourself grief for 3 days. Let them go and go back to your life.
And it's like when people give dictates about how you need to handle your inside terrain, that's okay, you can follow those. I know in the Jewish culture, it's like 7 days.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And there's this wear all black, and then you cover up mirrors. There's a tradition. It makes sense. So I like the idea that you can gravitate toward taking a little bit of the 3 days, the 7 days. But I think what people don't remember is like the issue is in the tissue. So memories are going to come up. You don't have to, ruminate over that all the time, but you can acknowledge, I'm remembering that person. And I go like, well, remember something really happy about that, if there was anything happy, and if not, just like, okay.
And part of the happiness is not determining what intellectually makes you happy, and say, I am happy that I had the experiences.
Right, living only valuable experiences. And if you look at things that way, everything's a valuable experience.
Everything.
It can be. But then so much of what's happening now on our planet is that entrainment, that constant pressure of don't go outside the norm, do exactly what it is that you need to be doing. Don't go outside the norm. Don't shift. Don't attempt to do something different. And please don't question what you're told to do. There seems to be something heavy about that right now.
I think the important thing is that people have to realize everyone has a separate, different, unique purpose. And the purpose is to do absolutely nothing with their life and just breathe.
Mm-hmm. So it's not about accomplishment as we've been taught.
That's right.
That you have to keep rising up to achieve something that others will recognize and acknowledge. There seems to be a heavy part of acknowledgement in a lot of that. So yeah, why is it that just being alive and breathing is not enough?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And in our educational system, particularly the English versions of education, it's an imposition. This is what you need if you're going to be successful. And if you don't follow this, you're not going to be successful.
Yeah, and the dictates are, in this world, we say
Yes.
that this is what you need to do to be successful. Well, maybe as people start to recommit to the actions they're going to take, it could be that they question commitment to somebody else's program. Yeah?
Yes, yes.
No, we no longer have to commit to somebody else's program.
And so I think the important thing is whenever there's an ending in a relationship, with a pet, when a tree falls down or burns, is to allow it, parts of it at least, allow them to re-enter the earth. Because we've used up most of the natural blood flow of the planet. And that's why our weather is so disturbed. Mount Aso in Japan blew up last night. In Greece, it's blowing up an island. The big island Hawaii had another eruption. It's because we have drained so much just to satisfy our egos. Coal, oil, that's part of the blood flow of the planet.
They're part of the life force.
And so we are slowly saying, no, not slowly, we're saying individual ego is far superior to the planet.
And we've been doing that for a long time.
Thousands of years.
And that's why a really small percentage of people have been able to, we'll just say the wealthy elite have been able to corral a lot of us, a lot of the human population, into following certain mandates and dictates that really are not about sharing or spreading the wealth, so to speak. They're really about maintaining control totally. So yeah, it's important to pay attention.
and observe and allow your observation to be objective, not subjective.
So be in it, but not of it.
Thank you.
That's one of the things that,
Very important.
be in it, but not of it. And that's a challenge for,
For all of us.
yeah, from time to time.
But like if you are watching a flash flood, yes, protect yourself, try to avoid it, but don't avoid it in fear.
So we're talking about the undertones of your energy, how important that is.
Yes, because if you are running from a flood because you're afraid, you'll be among those that sink it.
Like attracts like, doesn't it?
Yes.
The principle of no resistance.
Birds of a feather.
Birds of a feather flock together.
My mother had an interesting take on that,
What'd she say?
but it's not for on the air.
Oh, okay.
Birds of a feather
Oh,
together.
yeah. And you can add that in there, don't you? True story.
Oh.
Yeah, the one like when you lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas. There's that, there's that little saying too. Yeah. So what do we do with all of this? All of this great knowledge and wisdom that we've accumulated over, many timelines. And then we find ourselves here needing to kind of rebirth ourselves. What's the new committed action that people need to take? I mean, that's kind of the question I find on my plate these days. What's the new committed action that people need to take to come to solution with all that is transpiring? That's a deep question.
Oh, that's why the big sigh.
Yeah, it's a deep question.
Oh, yes. The important thing is not focusing so much on one element that is very important to the individual personality and focusing so much on it that it becomes an aggressive effort to convert other people to a way of thinking.
Yeah,
And there's so much of that happening.
that's a slippery slope.
Oh, yeah.
Mine's to put your skis on and just go for it. It really is a slippery slope.
And it's so important to realize that there are millions of beliefs and all of them are right.
That could be a starting ground for a lot of people, couldn't it be?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Suppose you're right, I'm right, and they're right.
Mm-hmm,
Oh my goodness. So we have a bunch of different rightnesses. It's just about what you choose to follow.
Choose to follow. So you make your choice, but then you don't expect other people to agree with you, to change for you. And I have to interrupt and say, hi, Mara. Thank you for acknowledging us. And it's an important, as you say, topic, and we'll continue it.
Yeah. It's such an important topic. It could be a conversation that you could have around the coffee table with your girlfriends.
Absolutely.
And even with your children.
We, in the Universal Life Alliance, are having a gathering next Thursday. And it's a wonderful topic for that group just to talk about, bounce it around. And there's like 16 to 20 people going to be there. And there are going to be 16 to 20 different opinions.
Yes, absolutely. So you mentioned that if you're not on the mailing list for To Love, and you're going to want to go to the website, and I think Chris has that up on the screen, the www.theuniversallifealliance.org. If you go there, you can find the phone number, but I can give you the phone number. It's 253-433-2787. 8589, you can dial that number and say, I would like to be on your RSVP list for your little, what's kind of a Halloween fun thing, mask optional, no pun intended. And yeah, we're just gathering and having some fun, some snacks and some fun. So let us know, and then you can get the address to Anita's
And
house.
having fun doesn't necessarily mean comedy type fun. Having fun is the joy, the pleasure of sharing ideas with other people and sharing the knowledge that we're all different and our differences are what are creating the new world. And like it or not, gang, that's what we're doing. We're creating a new era.
With each thought and with each action, that's what's happening. And, so fun and laughter is super important to gatherings, fun and laughter. But, we'll all kind of impact each other and kind of guide each other in that way, I would think.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, it's not like a comedy club. However, there's some funny things that are said, so
Oh, yes.
Yeah, when you get people.
But what's funny to me might not be funny to you.
Sure.
And so that's part of the fun.
Yeah, it's part of the fun. So again, if you go ahead and to the universalifealliance.org and you can dial that number, that 253-433-8589, and you can just say, I want to be in your RSVP list, maybe for not this time, but next time. You'll be on there, you'll be notified. And then if you want to go, we can give you the number to call to get directions to Anita Burton's house, because she's going to be hosting our event. That's going to be really great fun.
But she's hosting it one time. That just sounded like she always hosts.
Oh, okay. So if, was there some, there was something we're talking about and showing things. I got a hold of a great book. It's called, and I posted it on the Facebook page, but it's called The Truth About COVID. And if any of you are still in a quandary about what this particular narrative is about and what it's not about, I highly recommend this book. It's by Dr. Joseph Mercola and Ronnie Cummins. The foreword is by John F. Kennedy Jr. This is posted on the Facebook page, so you can go find out, where you can get this. Yeah, it's got some good stuff in it.
And it's not saying you have to agree with it.
No, but the idea that it's really easy to just follow one particular narrative because you just got one lens to look at things, and this gives you some other lenses by which to look at this situation. Then you can make a more informed choice about your committed action in the future. And I think that's really important.
Oh, absolutely.
To make a more informed choice about your committed action in the future.
And so, reading this book, to really be informed, read books with contrary opinions.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to you're not going to find all of the truth if you focus just on what pleases you. So gather opinions and then find, using your five senses, find what's true for you.
Mm-hmm. But that's like an encouraging thing for everybody. It's like trust your instincts.
Yes.
Trust when things come to you.
Yes.
Like for instance, the bird crashing against the glass window. The first thing I actually looked up was, what do we need to do as homeowners to help the birds not crash into our glass window? And with looking that up, I discovered, it happens rather regularly.
Oh, yes, it does.
Okay, and there's, cardinals, robins, finches, that happens to them a lot. And it's because, that mating season happens. They're a little bit territorial. There's that, so they're thinking they're seeing a reflection to fend that off. And then the other one is, like, they just see an ultraviolet light, so they can't make that distinction with their reflection. So it said get some little deflectors on there. Now I know why I see those on people's glass windows a lot. Birds or some little shiny thing. So that was the first thing. And then I just looked up metaphysically, what does that mean? Death, rebirth, and that's
Sure.
that. So I just start asking myself, so you physically are not dying, but what parts of you, Renata, what parts of you are ready to go? What things are you holding on to that you need to let go of? So that's how I dealt with that, metaphysically. And then some good stuff came up for me. So, a lot of you probably know how to do that. Use the metaphor.
Yes.
Use the symbol. You don't have to actually experience it personally to get the message or to get the knowledge. I think that's also super important.
And often with that, yes, you learn from every experience. But as Renata just pointed out, sometimes you can learn it without experiencing it, as long as you recognize someone is having that experience.
Right.
Because we're part of shared life.
And there's lots of things out there in the ethers that you can learn from and take it in and go, oh,
Absolutely.
that was a great teaching, and I didn't have to step into the school. And that makes life a lot more graceful.
Because we are all in school together, just the school of life.
Yeah. And a lot of us are ready to graduate from, Earth School. So some are leaving, going someplace else. Some of us are still here, and we're just stepping up to a new level. A lot of us are up-leveling. Creating more win-win scenarios with our daily commitments.
Yes.
And even we were kind of brainstorming on a rather huge project that we got excited about, a $145,000 project for fundraising. That's pretty substantial. But we were breaking it down into little segments in terms of people tend to think one way about raising money or bringing a new idea to people. So first, you and I were just brainstorming on new ways to think about talking about new ideas and how to present them. Like this, is it called Green Farms? Is that the actual name of it, Green Farms?
Yes.
And they do shipping containers. Well, they don't do the shipping containers, but they outfit the shipping containers with water, lights, that whole thing, so that hydroponically food can be grown. When I saw that, a Facebook post or something, I'm like, wow, that's cool. So we began to investigate that to see, well, what is it that Tula could do to encourage maybe people that have land and people that have lots of resources and they're not sure what to do with it? Could we plant the idea or the seed for them to collaborate together?
Yes.
And then you and I decided, yeah, that's one of our strengths, and that's one of the organization's strengths, is to bring people together across the globe, world family.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, yeah. Because sometimes maybe people that are philanthropists that have lots of resources, sometimes they're just more concerned, forgive me for saying, but just keeping their resources. And they actually give a lot of lip service to, doing well for the community or the world at large. So there's not always a lot of integrity with, those donations. So we're saying we can up-level that whole situation by coming in with a new creative way to supply food.
And supply food, not just for the people who can afford to buy food.
No, there would be overflow from, a project like this in a community where they could feed themselves, and they could also distribute food out to people that could not, and then they could sell some of that food for people that can, see? So it's like bringing a collective together. And that really is the baseline by which we need to proceed now, because people do fall through the cracks. Whether they can't read the language, you fall through the cracks. If you don't have access to transportation, you fall through the cracks.
Oh, yes.
If you don't have family who can interpret for you or give you a ride, you fall through the cracks. You know, so it's very easy with our system to not meet anybody's needs, but to still be a system and give lip service to we're doing this and doing that, but we still have a huge homelessness challenge. And I'm like, okay, so maybe we're just throwing some money at it. And instead of throwing some money at it, maybe we need to reinvent how we look at the idea
Yes.
of homelessness. It's not just that you don't have a roof over your head, although that's super important. But homelessness is like, it's an inside energy of, it's an inside energy. It's just not about the shelter. It's about belonging to community.
And one of the things that I instantly go to is the fact that people say, well, the homeless, there's plenty of jobs available out there. But most don't take into consideration the fact that if they're homeless, they don't have a place to clean up. They don't have a place to do their makeup, to change their clothing, or to keep clothing as acceptable for interviews. So we have to create a shared lifestyle that it gives everyone equal opportunities.
I just thought of that like a shared ability to respond, a shared responsibility.
Yes.
And it's not like you have to do everything for people, because that's enabling, that's a
Oh, yeah,
whole
you
different
don't, yeah.
energy. But we thought about the shipping container idea because we saw this summer, we got a nice tour of the homeless camp up on 6th Avenue by Evergreen State Campus. And I would say our friend Sequoia, he was really gracious, really tall guy, really intelligent, toured us around. I'm like, wow. We left going, well, I don't know what we can do. Really like, what can we do? And then when we talked about the shipping container, like, what if we could get one of those? And then they could be responsible for growing. There could be a whole enterprise. That's really innovative of us. But we know we have to back that down a little bit to introduce the idea that that's even possible. I mean, the show is called Exploring Infinite Possibilities.
Right.
You and I and all of you out there are the infinite possibilities when you open up to them.
And when you stand up for what you believe in, when you speak for what you believe, you are at that point contributing to the solutions that are available. Because there's never in this universe a challenge first. The solutions come long before the problem.
There's something always to go to solution. I
Yep.
feel you on that one.
Yep.
And then even hearing you say that too, it's like, how important is it for us to stay in the now? Because
Live in the now.
when we dip
now,
back,
now.
when we dip back too much further to some other time, then it's hard to catch the opportunities and open up the door for things that come.
Now that goes back to the preserving the bodies. Like in Egypt, like in other parts of the world, where they embalm them, we do that here, that is limiting. Let the body go, let it go back to its natural form, dust, into the earth, into the winds, and then evolution can happen. Then solutions will happen.
Who says that the energy is gone just because the body is no longer
Thank
there,
you.
right?
Absolutely.
Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I know that we did let the kids know that we wanted to be cremated. A lot of people are making sure that they tell their loved ones, don't spend money on a funeral thing for me. No. In fact, I'd love to be a tree. Plant me in a little container and then let a tree grow for me. That'd be cool.
And I told my son over in Hawaii that my ashes are to be planted by giving them to the winds. And wherever they go, they will form and be absorbed into a tree, an animal, a bird. So be willing to contribute to a planet that can survive for the next generations.
Well, and that's what we've been taught to believe, that our essence, our soul, has no impact. So don't be trying to leave anything intangible, like that doesn't matter. Once you're gone, you're dust. But see, that story is not true. And if you want to continue to believe that story, it's up to you to do that. But I'm saying, no, that's the immortality of the essence of the human being and the spirit. That's the immortality.
It's the evolutionary process, yes. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So we do impact each other, and that's why we just keep saying it's so important for you to choose.
And everyone has the right to choose.
And no one has the right to tell you that your choice is incorrect.
Because it's right for you.
Exactly. And especially with this whole COVID reset crazy making that we've got going on. If you feel crazy in the midst of this, honor that you feel crazy in the midst of it, and do your best to extrapolate yourself out of the situation so you feel more alive, less crazy.
Yes.
Or maybe I'll say less crazed, because crazy is good sometimes. Crazy is good sometimes. But yeah, there is an essence of non-reality that's happening when we buy into things that, we think we should. We think we should, just because it's there.
Well, you've heard me say many times, when people say to me, William, you're crazy, I say, well, thank you, but how would you recognize crazy if you weren't crazy yourself? We're
That's
all
true.
mirrors to each other.
That we're all heavy reflective mirrors, and now that we're moving into this new energy, the universe is supporting it. If you follow astrology mentions some things. So there's lots happening, stirring us up on the inside.
Yes.
To kind of recommit to our action steps. They're different now. We need we're like different action figures now,
Love it.
We don't need to be so moldable by others. We need to be able to mold ourselves and morph ourselves. I love Transformers. And transform ourselves into the powerful beings that we have been intended to be. That's why we're here. If you're still here, you're part of the mix. You're part of the new matrix.
That's right.
And you just have to own that to become that.
And by the way, it's not your profession that's going to make your soul successful. It's not how much money you have in land and property and in the bank. That's not your method of having soul fulfillment. But be abundant with what you do to make sure that all life is acknowledged. Then you will be successful. And the gods will give you whatever you need for economic exchange.
That manifestation is how that happens, but sometimes, oftentimes, most times, you mentioned ego. Ego gets in there and says to you, it needs to look a certain way or else it's not.
Yep.
And that's the ego's job, is to defend whatever it is that they need to defend. I love finding books. I found a book called Hearts from Madeline, and it just had some hearts that were made from flowers, rubber bands, just odd things, and it was like a whole book. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then I just read the backstory like last night about why that was done, and there was like a little bit of a couple of words, and I'm like, oh, I want to share. The hearts were made to get rid of or to process grief. A relationship ended. It was a new relationship, and short-lived. But this person's heart opened up after knowing this person. They had all this stuff, so they start making hearts to honor out of all kinds of things from the earth. I thought that was really cool. And a couple words they said is, you must accept your unacceptable. Those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words I read in that I'm like, oh, I came full circle with that book about heart energy and processing that when you're cracked wide open from relationships and different kinds of situations in your life. You must accept your unacceptable. I love that definition of grief. You must accept your unacceptable.
I often tell the story of an old woman in England who her family wanted to put her into a home. So she went to Scotland. And after visiting Findhorn, she went back and said to her family, there's nothing left for you to hold on to. I've sold everything, and I bought a little home in Scotland. And one of her kids said, you must be a little cracked. And she said, darling, a little cracked lets in a great deal of light.
It's cute. I love every time I hear that. I love that.
And it's true, gang. So be a little bit yourself. Be a little cracked. You're the only thing that matters. That doesn't mean you're better than anyone else. But for your life, you have to take care of yourself. Then you can take care of everybody else.
You need to appreciate your own value and your presence on this
Thank
planet.
you. Perfect, perfect, perfect.
That's just like a huge one. So this is time for a little commercial as well.
Go for it.
Because I really want to encourage you to go to that website that's on the top of the screen, the universallifealliance.org, and check out our organization. It is a 501c3 nonprofit founded by Reverend William Rainin in 1976. And the idea is to shift consciousness one thought at a time. That's what the verbiage was back then. But now we're shifting consciousness many people at a time.
Mm-hmm.
However, the shift starts with you.
Always.
And so, 40 years later, the organization is still running strong, and we've included a few other things to bring it up to date, because there was just cut and paste when you were coming along. There was no online. There was internet, but that was like high intelligence in the military kind of thing.
Oh, exactly.
For the masses. But now everybody has access to information, the potential of access to information. Now we have to decipher whether it's good information, valuable information, or whether it's just, fake information. There's almost too much out there now for a lot of us.
And that's why you hear me saying over and over again, be involved with your 5 senses. Mm-hmm. Because your 5 senses, smell, taste, all will guide you to know if something is right or not right for you. I can go into a restaurant. I smell the restaurant. If it doesn't feel comfortable for me, I leave. But the people I'm with, they might have a different reaction to that aroma. And then that's right for them. So get in touch with your 5 senses, and it will expand your entire life. I interrupted.
Oh, you're good. Because it's about, you were just talking about discernment and how important that to use discernment as you move out in life, because that is the barometer for me now. I honor those things that come to me.
It's because then you will know what's right for you. I know a woman in San Diego, and she knew it was not right for her to be married and have children. But she knew that only in the intellectual part of her brain. She didn't listen to her soul. She didn't listen to her 5 senses.
Yeah.
So she went along with what she was taught and became depressed and wound up with kids that her husband had to raise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, I knew at a very early age that I didn't want children in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I had a dog, and that was enough. And I have stepchildren, which is great. So I get, I'm in it but not of it. I just honored that.
I love that statement. In it but not of it.
Mm-hmm. And so I get the nurturing instinct and all of that going on. I just didn't want to raise children personally in this lifetime, so I did not. And we all have that. We all have that choice. Not about children, not children, but we all have that choice, and those choices that we can commit to in our action steps of making this a better planet while we're here.
And so when you make a choice and parents, friends say, you should have done this, you should have done this, if you've used your 5 senses with your ego and with your soul, you will know what's right for you. So listen to yourself, not to what other people have taught you.
Right. I mean, I love that where you said not what other people have taught you. It's like you're not saying don't listen to other people. No, do listen to other people. Of course. You're good. But then always defer back to you, because you're the authority in your life. And if you're not the authority in your life, once you step up and become the authority in your life, you'll be good. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up for not
and
feeling
allow
that way.
everyone the same privilege.
Allow everybody the right to be, but then sometimes they have to be out of your face and your space. That's true.
And so I personally don't believe that divorce is valid any longer. When you get married or you get with a partner, say to them, this is wonderful for now, let's have a wonderful time. And when one, me or you, evolves or develops in a different way, just tell each other and go each other's way in peace.
I think that people could level up to better communication with themselves first. And then,
Stars and rainbows for that one.
Mm-hmm. And then it's a lot easier to just honor what comes for you. And, of course, right timing is, what right timing? Right timing is right timing for you. So there again, that idea of discernment, it's like it's important to have your action steps that you commit to, and then you use all the principles, right timing. Maybe you don't want to wake somebody up in the middle of the night and say, hey, it's time to talk. They're tired. It may not, you may not get their full attention. So that's what I mean about right timing. You can always do things in the context of love. It's easy to be pissy at someone and strike out at them,
yes. Do I know that one?
Yeah, we all know that one. It's okay for that to happen, but then you can kind of come back and recollect yourself and go, you know what? I'm sorry, that was kind of like a boo-boo there.
And you say to the person, yourself as well, that was yesterday. It's not happening today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can I take and run with your announcement and do another one?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Okay. Next week, we're having a guest.
Oh, yay.
And he is a long-term friend. Sometimes we say we've known each other 30 years. It's more likely 40 years, but in reality, it's closer to 50 years. But whatever. Kevin Brahaney Fortune, composer, conductor. His music is used internationally in museums, in airports. If you go to Chicago Airport and you go through their big, long, beautiful tunnel, that music you're hearing is done by Kevin. And so Kevin is going to be our guest by way of Zoom. He lives on a mountain in California. And so if you're interested in music, he does a lot of music for people who meditate and are trying to reach higher levels. And so it'll be a unique experience to ask him questions, to talk to him about the music of the spheres. So next week, Kevin Brahaney Fortune.
And again, if you go to our website,
oh yes,
theuniversalifealliance.org, under William's blog, you will find not only Malama Lama K9, but you'll also find a nice bio on Kevin. And we invite you to go click on the link so you can listen to some of his music.
Oh, yes.
He does customized music for your own personal evolution and growth. And I know I've been listening to, not Kevin's necessarily, but some 432 hertz music.
Yes.
which has been really, that's like some background music that I put in the house. So go check some of those things out. You might find some things that you want to buy, some snippets of music. Yeah, that was a whole nugget thing there. And I hear that maybe he's going to be in his studio. It just depends on.
He'll be in the studio.
Oh,
yes.
okay, so yay, we'll get to see some of his equipment and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, because he plays 30-something instruments. I mean, I had trouble with 3.
I managed one, the violin, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of cool. I'm excited about that one.
So I think it's going to be fun and enlightening.
And Kevin's a nice guy too. I mean, I've talked to him on the phone several times. He's one of our board members on Tula.
Oh, yeah.
But I've never met him in person. But I feel like I have a little handle on how he is, from talking to him and listen to his music.
Excellent, excellent. Mm-hmm. So next week we'll have Kevin.
We'll do. Okay, well, let's go with another announcement.
Go for it, girl.
Because I have been putting together a couple of classes, and so
yes,
I do have a Renata's master class coming up for blending. It's and I'll post it so you don't have to put this to memory. But November 12th and 13th, November 19th and 20th, and December 3rd and 4th. So those are Friday and Saturday. The Friday is going to be online. It's the instructional part. So you kind of are prepared when you come to the in-person part of the class for blending. I figured that'd be a good way to go. And if you're just interested in the information, because you're a novice blender, great. You can just attend the Friday part, pay for that. If you want to do the whole Friday and Saturday, then, you can do that too. So I will post those on, again, there's our website, www.theuniversallifealliance.org, and that'll be great.
And for those of you who want to live naturally and still productively, if you want to take care of your body and turn it into a sanctuary, the blending process will be remarkable.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was going to say that. So we're taking everyday health and beauty aids. Like one of the things that we're going to increase the value of for you is like Vicks. And we'll do some coconut oil.
Yes.
I'll have you probably bring in one of your shampoos, and then we're going to make a tincture. So there's like 4 different aspects of the blending that you'll get my 30 years of experience. You'll get to pick my brain. And I've got lots of things in our dispensary for you to create your own products to make your life better, more graceful, and to take the mystery out of creating things for yourself. That's really what it takes, the mystery out of it. And it gives you permission to do that.
And so many people in our current era are getting more involved with natural products, natural living, and evolutionary process. This class, I 100% support it because, I have a number of injuries that I'm surviving with. And one of the blends that Renata made for me specifically has improved so much of my walking, my ability to rest. Everyone has more than just medicine as a valuable tool.
Absolutely. And again, just to reiterate, there has been an intense effort to keep a lot of us away from the knowledge that we can utilize to make our lives more graceful.
True.
In our Western medical system, it has its place for sure. But so does self-healing and self-care, and that's really my platform. So that's where I come from in terms of working with people. Self-healing and self-care, that's the new love.
Well, I think that what you're talking about is new on some levels and ancient on other levels. Because the gods in every major and minor religion all said that anything needed for growth, balance, and light exists on the planet. So it's getting in touch with what you deserve.
And, just speaking about watching the Magic Fungi documentary.
Yes.
I was like turned on by the whole idea of going out and finding little, mushrooms now. In addition to, aside from like Venezuela and Mexico, one other country, the use of psilocybin mushrooms, which is what started this discussion, is illegal. So Oregon has decriminalized the use of psilocybin mushrooms, which is the psychedelic component of a particular genre of mushrooms. But media has hyped that to make it seem like you go crazy, and it's all about getting the high and hallucinating. And after watching this documentary, the psilocybin and the inner knowledge that's imparted in consciousness has nothing to do with getting high or anything like that. So that was interesting for me to kind of shed that old thought process about psychedelics in particular. So I would really recommend, if anybody likes to watch documentaries, they're fascinating from time to time. It's called Fantastic Fungi. And one of the main presenters of knowledge in this particular movie has the mushroom farm and his institute in Olympia. So it's close to us. I mean, we're down here in Pierce County, so Olympia's not too far. And George and I watched that and thought, oh, maybe we'll go meet this. I believe his name is Paul Stanley. I just enjoyed getting that knowledge imparted from him about
Now, I have to interrupt. Last night, I did a meditation, and one of the messages was, your group is soon going to meet Paul. I don't know any Paul, and you just mentioned it.
I did, and I thought, Renata, that was too much information. You didn't need to mention his name, but it just came out.
But it just, sometimes,
see, that's what we're talking about.
You have to pay attention to energy, not just detail.
And maybe pay attention to, where the information came from, For instance, Maria sent me a little text and said, oh, have you seen this Mushroom Summit? I'd seen that on my feed a bunch of times. I just deleted it, no. But because Maria sent it to me, let me check it out. And lo and behold, I listened to several of the little snippets, and then I got a few names, and then I saw Magical Mushroom. I should watch that documentary. So full circle, and there was some knowledge there. Okay, We're good. I love that.
Yeah, well, and
I just love that.
My meditation, I said, I don't know a Paul. One of my boys had a boyfriend that was Paul, and that Paul and I never got along. And so I basically forgot him. And you mentioned the name, and I go, oh, my goodness.
Isn't that interesting how Spirit just brings us together?
They do.
That's that trust part.
Exactly.
And that's that intuition part. And that's that paying attention. You can miss a lot of great stuff because we're just so locked up here.
So I do a class with the 5 senses, and it's all about expanding your consciousness to become more intuitive, to answer your own questions. And that's that thing of the Spirit brought the name in a meditation, and I discounted it because the only Paul I knew was one I didn't like.
Okay, so I'm going to add one more in there. What got me to even pay attention is this Paul Stanley was talking about how he used to stutter so horribly. He was a stutterer, he said. He's like, I could, and he would always look down at the ground. And then he said he had kind of an experience and with the mushrooms, and he was kind of caught in a storm up in a tree holding on for dear life is what he said. And he'd taken these mushrooms oh my God, I'm just holding on to the tree. He stuttered so badly, he said, well, so what can I communicate with myself? He's like, okay, he said, he started saying, stop stuttering, stop stuttering, stop stuttering, stop stuttering, and then a couple hours later, the storm was over, he was down, he was home, he was soaking wet, he was in the bed, he was up. And this woman that he's known for a long time that he likes, but he didn't know how to communicate with her because he stuttered so badly, she walked up to him and said, hi, Paul. And he said, hi. he no longer, I got chills on that story. He no longer
Love it.
stuttered. He no longer stuttered. So then I'm like, oh, the antidotes that they give about psilocybin being like just for hippies and people get high and it has no value. I just totally erased that whole story that I carried about that and thought, you need to meet this guy. And then here's one other little antidote. He loved his mom. His mom had, at 81, stage 4 breast cancer. You know, we had a couple of people on the show talking about their healing journey with that. Here's another healing journey, just in a nugget. He had her take some of the turkey tail and a few other of the mushrooms in capsules. She's 94 now. She's still alive. I'm like, okay, number 2, I need to meet this Paul Stanley. So, and then your meditation. I love that, William.
Yeah, it's a confirmation.
It's confirmation.
Right, and you can all do it. You can all discover elements of your life that science has kept away from so many people.
Yeah, they get you afraid. Remember, Reefer Madness was the one, like, don't smoke marijuana. You know, there's, you go crazy.
And it's not saying that you give up your intellect. I say it's expanding it.
There's so much precious knowledge that has been covered over in the names of keeping control over us human beings. You know, it's just a huge wake-up call that we're having on our planet at this time, and I'm just really happy to be part of that and to stimulate others to continue that waking up that makes us a better planet.
Yes. So, well, I'm looking forward to next week, as I always look forward to being here in the studio.
I know.
With Chris looking at me right across the microphone, and that makes me feel tickly inside. So we're all part of a collective consciousness.
We are.
Yes.
With some human bodies attached to them.
And some birds and some animals.
And some birds and some animals.
Yes.
You got any other words of wisdom?
Yes. See you next week.
We'll see you next week. Arrivederci.